We're back with that 1966 Bandmaster, the one that you saw yesterday, and it has magically been transformed into a very quiet, reliable amp. How did we get here? Well, let's take a look at everything we did, starting with the bias and rectification board. After taking some measurements of the diodes and such, I've removed the rectification and bias board from the amp because all these diodes need to be replaced because the reverse voltage varies all over the map from infinite to 2 volts. And that's a sign of a diode that is feeling its age, and as diodes are very, very inexpensive, but very, very crucial to the behavior and safety of the amp, it's time to replace them. I'll replace this 470 ohm resistor at the same time, and of course the bias filter cap. Note that I cut the lead short here because the positive lead of this old cap is the same bit of wire that's going to the chassis ground. So I cut it here so I could kind of poke it up in the air. So I cut it here and left that one straight up so then I could then heat up the solder and lift the whole thing up. So in the chassis, the original wire is still there coming up. When I put this back, I will slide that over that wire, bend it down mechanically, resolder it, and won't have to do a chassis ground that, I'm not afraid of them, but it's one less thing to have to do. So this new cap will get replaced. And one of the reasons I like to remove everything rather than just replace from the top is I like to get the old solder out, the old flux out, because the flux is kind of yucky, and then make sure that the new components have some mechanical support where the leads go under the board and are crimped over. So it's not just relying on the solder for glue. Kind of making it just like it was from the factory all over again. And here everything has been replaced. The old components are there. They'll go in a bag to be returned with the amp in case any future owner wants to have such vintage bits of junk. And I've not soldered everything yet, but everything's holding in place just fine because those mechanical connections on the bottom I mentioned. I'll do the same thing next when I do the filter caps board. But I'll solder this before I put it in place. And here it is back in place with everything soldered except this ground wire. And this wire here that's crimped over for some mechanical support, that's the original positive lead from the old cap. And that's going to chassis to the left there. So that's crimped over, so it's mechanically good. This amp would actually work right now without any solder added to that joint. But I'm going to do it anyway because I'm feeling generous. Just like the positive lead of the bias cap is the connection to chassis. In the preamps, the negative lead of the cathode bypass caps is the same wire that goes to the chassis. So I can't really remove this resistor in factory condition without replacing all these wires. And that would just be for the purpose of having an old leaking cap from 1966, that's not been cut at either end. To me, that's silly. So what I like to do is I cut it about 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/4 inch away from the board. So I can remove this cap, and then I will remove this solder, bend this wire over to make a J-hook going this way, and then once the solder is removed and that's bent out of the way, there'll be room for the negative lead of the new capacitors to go there. All right, the old cathode bypass caps are out, including one over to the left you can't see, and the solder has been removed from the eyelets, and the old leads have been bent back at crimped pretty tight, so they will not pull out, and they have a mechanical connection before solder is applied. So it's time to put in the new caps, at which point all the solder gets replaced, and I will try to match cosmetically the old domes that Fender did back in the day. New caps in place, so pretty. The blue one's a 4.7 because MOD does not make a 4.7 or 5 microfarad there. The original was 25, but a lot of Fenders from the 60s actually had 5 microfarad here, which I prefer. It makes the speed on the tremolo respond much faster. On to the filter caps. All the old stuff out, everything cleaned up, including the old flux. New caps in place, a little bit of silicone beneath them, and the leads are all crimped over like on the other stuff I've shown you. I did solder the 2 resistors ahead of time because I didn't want to get down in there between. On some amps, there's less space available, so I like to do those first. These other solder joints I like to do after it's screwed back in place, just so we're not putting any stress on those joints. All right, everything in place, all the wires reconnected, all the solder joints are good, nice domes, everything's clean, no excess flux. And here you can see the new 3 watt 470 ohm screen grid resistors on the output sockets because I don't trust those 58-year-old 1-watt carbon comps. They just fail way too often. So all the recap part is done, and I've cleaned all the pots, I've cleaned all the jacks, I've tightened all the hardware, I've cleaned the tube pins, I've cleaned the tube sockets, I've recapped it, redone everything, the bias and rectification board. Still got to change out the power cable because I used the last 3-conductor cable I had in stock the other day. So yesterday I ordered some more, and that's an easy thing to do. At this point, let's see how it sounds. I think it might be a little bit low in gain still, and that could be weak 12AT7, weak old 6L6s. We'll get there. All the voltages seem fine, but that's kind of making it perfect. Right now, I'm just trying to make sure all the noise is gone. So we'll start on the normal channel. Now, I tightened the lamp as well with that nut. As you can hear, all the big noise is gone. A little bit of static. I might need to clean this volume pot a little bit more, but it's very, very minor compared to the horrible sounds it's making the other day or yesterday. Alright, that bright cap's not as effective as that bright cap. These things drift. I bet if I measured it, it would measure smaller than 120 picofarad. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. The noise is gone. And I need to check the value of the bright cap on this channel, the treble cap rather, not the bright cap, because it doesn't have as much treble as it should on tap in comparison to the almost identical normal channel. Yeah, so there's some more sweetening work to be done, but all the nasty noises are gone and it's not going to catch on fire, so this is a good place to leave it for now. I think this will be the end of this video, which got us from a noisy, unreliable, awful thing to a very promising, quiet, nice place. Let's see what we can do next time to make it perfect. And hey, Thanks for watching.